But Ruth persisted, and in 1956, Mattel fashioned the first Barbie doll.
Behind that perfect smile was a decision that challenged an entire toy industry. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why one company gambled everything on a doll that wasn't a baby. Before Barbie, dolls were babies. That was simply what children were expected to want, something to cradle, feed, and put to sleep. One woman noticed something different while watching her own daughter play. The paper dolls her daughter reached for again and again weren't babies at all. They were grown women, living out entire imagined lives. That single observation would eventually reshape an entire industry. Once dismissed as an idea unlikely to work in a toy aisle built almost entirely around infants, Barbie by the early 1960s was about to become something nobody at the company had fully predicted. It sounds obvious today. In 1959, it was about as unconventional as putting a teenager on a shelf meant for babies and expecting parents to buy it anyway. This video takes you inside the real 1960s factories where Barbie was built. The molds, the vinyl, the hand-finished faces, the tiny stitched clothes. Right now, let's step inside. The story starts with Ruth Handler, one of the founders of Mattel. Watching her daughter Barbara play, she noticed the girl preferred paper dolls shaped like adult women over the baby dolls sold everywhere else. Ruth began asking a simple question. Why did dolls only represent who a child already was, instead of who they might become? Most dolls at the time were designed to be cradled and cared for. In 1959, Mattel introduced Barbie at the American International Toy Fair in New York. The world met Barbara Millicent Roberts, better known simply as Barbie, not a baby, but a teenage fashion model with her own style and personality. When she debuted, Barbie wore a black and white striped swimsuit and a simple ponytail, modest by later standards, but strikingly different from anything else sitting on toy shelves that year. Here's where the story takes a turn many people never expect. Although Barbie was an American creation, many early dolls were manufactured in Japan, where factories had a strong reputation for detailed, precise craftsmanship. Mattel partnered with these factories because they combined skilled handwork with efficient production, exactly what a doll this intricate demanded, from painting tiny facial features to sewing miniature clothing. Many early vintage Barbie dolls carried a "Made in Japan" marking, a small detail that reveals just how much of the manufacturing took place overseas, even for an unmistakably American icon. Before plastic, before clothing, before any packaging existed, Barbie was only an idea on a designer's table. Sculptors had to decide every detail that would define her: face, proportions, hands, feet, hairstyle, even posture. Every curve had a purpose, because thousands of identical dolls would eventually be produced from one original sculpture. Once approved, that sculpture became a master model, the foundation for everything the factory would build. Turning that design into something reproducible meant engineering, not just artistry. Separate metal molds were created for the head, torso, arms, and legs. Each one needed to capture every detail from the original sculpture. A small flaw here wouldn't affect one doll, it would affect thousands. These molds became, in a real sense, the hidden machinery quietly deciding what millions of children would eventually hold. Mold makers worked closely with the original sculptors during this stage, translating soft, hand-shaped clay curves into hard industrial steel. Losing even a fraction of that original character in the process meant the whole design had to be revisited. Many early Barbie dolls used vinyl components, a material chosen for flexibility, durability, and realistic doll features. Inside the factory, heated vinyl was shaped inside the molds into lightweight, hollow body parts. This made the doll easier for a child to hold and more natural in appearance than a solid, heavy figure. Workers inspected each piece once it cooled, trimming excess material and checking for flaws before moving forward. Painting the face. This was one of the most delicate steps in the whole process. The moment a molded plastic head became a character with personality, workers carefully added eyes, eyebrows, lashes, lips, and blush. Even a small shift in placement could change the doll's entire expression. Workers used production techniques alongside careful finishing processes to keep facial details consistent across thousands of identical dolls. Hair wasn't just a finishing touch, it became part of Barbie's actual personality. Factories used synthetic fiber, carefully attached to the vinyl scalp through a process known as hair rooting. It's a strange thought, but factory workers spent real hours turning a small vinyl head into one of the most recognizable faces in toy history, arguably better hairstyling than most of us manage on any given Tuesday. Some of the era's most memorable looks emerged here, including the classic ponytail Barbie and the elegant bubble cut. Changing only the hair could make the same basic doll feel like an entirely new character. With face and hair complete, workers connected head, torso, arms, and legs, checking that every joint moved correctly. Throughout the 1960s, Mattel kept refining the design. New features like bendable legs allowed for more natural, varied poses. The goal was a doll that felt active and ready for whatever story a child imagined next. This is where Barbie became more than a doll. She became a fashion icon. Mattel designer Charlotte Johnson played a major role in shaping Barbie's wardrobe, studying real fashion trends. Designers translated those trends into miniature dresses, swimsuits, coats, and accessories. Many clothing pieces required skilled sewing work and careful assembly at a genuinely miniature scale. Fabrics had to be chosen carefully, and patterns shrunk down to fit an 11.5-inch frame. Each new outfit effectively created a different version of Barbie, turning her into an ongoing collectible experience. A single fabric choice that looked fine at full scale could behave completely differently once shrunk down. Stiffer, bulkier, or harder to drape naturally across such a small frame. Before any doll left the factory, it faced inspection. Workers checked face paint, hair placement, clothing fit, and joint movement, since consistency mattered enormously to the brand. Inspectors were specifically watching for uneven paint lines, loosely rooted hair, and joints that moved too stiffly or too loosely. Even a cosmetic flaw invisible to a child could still be enough to pull a doll from the line. Every child opening a box expected the exact doll shown in the advertisement. Only dolls that passed moved on to packaging, which was treated as part of the overall experience. The box itself, with its fashion imagery and carefully arranged display, was designed to feel like the beginning of a story, before a child had even touched the doll inside. The 1960s were a decade of constant transformation, and Barbie changed along with it. New hairstyles, outfits, and body designs appeared as fashion trends shifted year to year. One of the biggest changes came in 1967, with Twist and Turn Barbie, a more flexible body design allowing new poses earlier versions simply couldn't achieve. She had become a platform for evolving styles, not one fixed character. Decades later, those early dolls became more than toys. Collectors search for original 1960s versions because each one represents a different moment in Barbie's evolution. Hairstyles, outfits, body designs, and manufacturing changes. The materials tell their own story too. Vintage vinyl aged differently from modern plastics, giving older dolls a distinct character over time that's difficult to replicate intentionally. For collectors, a 1960s Barbie isn't just a toy sitting on a shelf. It's a small, tangible piece of design and manufacturing history, one that happened to be built small enough to fit in a child's hand. Condition matters enormously in this world. A doll with its original hairstyle intact, unfaded vinyl, and complete factory clothing is treated very differently from one that was heavily played with. A reminder that these were, first and foremost, meant to be toys, not museum pieces. A Barbie doll was never just a piece of shaped plastic. Behind every figure sold in the 1960s was a long chain of decisions. A sculptor's hands, a factory worker's careful stitching, a painter's steady brush. And maybe that's the real reason she outlasted almost every toy fad built around her. Trends came and went, and plastic technology moved on. But a doll built this carefully was never really designed to be thrown away. Unlike most of us, a well-preserved 1960s Barbie has managed to avoid a single wrinkle for over 60 years. A beauty secret more than a few people would probably love to get their hands on. Somewhere on the bottom of a vintage doll from this era, that quiet "Made in Japan" marking is still there. A small reminder that behind one of the world's most recognizable toys was never just a factory. It was craftsmanship, working at a scale small enough to fit in a child's hand.